Hambledon Vineyard is England's oldest commercial vineyard, which was planted by Major General Sir Guy Salisbury-Jones in 1952. In the present day, current owner Ian Kellett has a meticulous scientific approach to wine production. The wines are made solely using Chardonnay, Pinot Noir and Pinot Meunier. The aim is to extract the very best from each variety depending on their site and growing condition. With me today is the Vineyard Manager of Hambledon Vineyard, Nick Cran-Crombie, who talked to us about viticulture at Hambledon and the Hampshire vineyards, and what projects are going on at Hambledon Vineyards, and what influence the chalk has on his wines for him and the viticulture side. Interestingly, Vineyards of Hampshire was the first regional English wine group to be formed, starting in 2015, with the primary aim to create a strong place-specific identity for the wine. Almost all come from the spectacularly deep chalk soils.
Hi, I'm Mattias Carpazza, and this is the Looking Into Wine podcast. Wine and winemaking can be complex, but this podcast has a simple mission. We want to give you the skills and tools to harness your passion about wine. Through this series, we will shine a spotlight on some of the different regions, process, and concepts that shape the fascinating world of wine. I hope you enjoy the show and your own journey looking into wine. Welcome to the Looking Into Wine podcast, special focused on English wines. I'm your host, Mattias Carpazza, and today with me is the Vineyard Manager of Hambledon Vineyard in Hampshire, Nick Cran-Crombie. With Nick, we will explore the history of Hambledon Vineyards, the oldest winery in the UK since 1952, and also the viticulture implemented in the vineyards and in the UK. Welcome to the show, Nick. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Hello. Yeah, and hi, Mattia. Nice to be here.
Let's start maybe from the beginning with the oldest winery in the UK, Hambledon. What was the idea and how it came about?
Well, it's quite well documented that I think it's the oldest commercial vineyard rather than winery, but I think there were pressing facilities on site. So it's Major General Sir Guy Salisbury-Jones, who in the early 50s looked out from his house down at the front and decided that he'd like to plant some vines down there. I'm not actually sure what the varietals were. They're probably kind of odd sort of German varietals that make still wine, but they did very well with it. I think there was once a chap called Bill Carkery came on in the I think it was the mid '60s. He became the winemaker and vineyard manager there, and from that the still wines went on to do very well. Actually, I think they were served at various on the QE2. I think they were served up and at various events with royalty and what have you. So, and I think that continued on for a good while, and then I think it's sort of slowed in the 90s until Ian Kellett purchased the house and the vineyard.
Now the focus is on sparkling wines since Ian arrived, and he changed the
right.
view. What inspired him?
I think well, Ian's background is in science, so I think the reasoning behind him deciding to go for sparkling wine was based on his research into the soils that run through Hambledon, and it's the same chalk seam essentially that comes up through Champagne, and so it was simple deducing the facts that if we can get the right root stocks and clones, and the weathers look like it's going to get on side, there's no reason why we can't grow the same quality of grapes to produce the same quality of wine that the Champenoise do. And that was an idea that he had and some 20 odd years ago, and it's coming to fruition now. It's the gamble and it was an educated gamble basically, I think, and the wines are starting to show the value.
Recognized the brand outside the UK as well. There's a lot of interest around it, and I'm very happy to have someone here who's speaking to me today, because as I'm doing some interviews around with different producers around the UK, and What is your role there as a vineyard manager, and what is your day-to-day job?
Well, ultimately, my role is to manage the production of the best quality fruit possible and deliver it to the winery. It sounds quite simple, isn't it? It really isn't. So basically, it's my job is a lot of firefighting. I'm a slave to the weather. So whatever the weather is coming down the line at me, and we can only ever really get a 5-day lead on it maximum, really. So reacting to that, making sure that all the processes are hit in time for the vine to go through its processes in the sequence it likes to. There's only ever usually perhaps a 2 or 3 week window for each of the processes. So bud burst is usually in April. Sometimes it can be a bit earlier, sometimes it can be a bit later. This year it was much later. And then we go on to sort of flowering and fruit set. So as long as I've got everything in place for the plant to perform at its best, then I'm just reliant on the thing that I can't control, which is the weather.
Yeah. Talking of the weather, what are the risks that you find that are unique to England? Obviously, you compare a lot with Champagne. You've been working a lot close to Champagne and Hambledon, so I was wondering to see what is the difference.
I just think we are seeing with the climate change. I mean, I know it's labelled as climate change. I know viticulturalists that the world around are labelling it as climate chaos because there's no rhyme or reason to, as we've seen this year, to much of what's going on. For us, it's wet, cold, and lack of sunlight. But we're seeing that change. It's just there's no rhythm to that change, particularly this year highlights that. So frost is always a big issue for us around bud burst. Once we're through that, we then go on to flowering, which is, probably the most important part of the process with regards to establishing what yields we're going to get. We need nice, warm, clement weather for that. If it's raining, if it's too windy, if it's too cold, as it has been all of those this year, then we get a very poor fruit set. And then a poor fruit set, we're looking at diminished yields. Although last year, to be honest with you, there was some rain during the flowering, and that created a sort of a thing called millerandage, which is where not all of the berries set. But that actually, even though that reduces yields, it actually helped with the quality. You get a very good quality of fruit if the ripening season's okay. And last year it was. How
different do you find in the climate to like Champagne as like comparison?
Well, I think this year we're comparable to Champagne in the essence that Champagne had a very bad frost in April. We kind of avoided that because we had a later bud burst. They've had the worst downy mildew pressure since the late 50s, and they've also had a very bad powdery mildew problem. We've had the downy mildew problem. We haven't had the powdery mildew because we've not had that sustained hot weather. They've had the full spectrum. It's comparable, really, with the exception we've not had the hot weather this year. I think what the Champenois are seeing though is that temperatures are getting higher and higher. So where then the acids in the Chardonnays especially are starting to drop a lot quicker, and obviously those acids are required for sparkling wine.
And in the UK, you're seeing, I mean, at least the Hambledon, you're seeing it, and it's a bit more stable. The temperature wise, it's not getting so.
I wish we could say stable, but no, we've seen. So in 2018, we saw the best year to date on record for yields for English grape growing, and that was a very dry, warm May, June, July. We had some powdery issues in the August, and then it was a nice September. So we saw very good yields. Whether that will be replicated again, who knows? We all hope so. But no, it's a kind of, the best way to describe growing grapes in this country is it's a bit of a seat of the pants thing, if you know what I mean. It's just what's the next 4 days doing? Let's react as best we can within that narrow parameter.
I've been in the UK for 8 years, and the way that the weather change just during the day is so unpredictable. You leave in 20 minutes, everything changes, and it's a very.
So we've had hail in August. We've had I mean, as I say, it's not just in this country. I think weather generally is just in general chaos, and so who knows? I think we just have to do the best we can, and then hope that the weather's on our side.
And I wanted to speak about the fame chalk, because obviously Hambledon is famous and Hampshire is famous to have the white chalk. How does that help, and how do you?
Well, I mean, the obviously from my point of view, I think there's obviously with the winemakers, there's their discussion of what that chalk imparts into the flavors of the wine, or it's the terroir. From growing the grapes point of view, chalk's just a very good substrate for. It's free draining, but it's also very water retentive, so it can hang on to. I think it's something like 650 litres per square meter, so per cubic meter of chalk will hold water. So we never have to irrigate here. We never have an issue with having the vines drying out. The only downside I would say to the chalk is that it can lock up iron. So iron can become, the plant can't extract the iron out. So we have to either foliar feed iron products, or we also inject chelate and iron chelate into the soil directly in areas where the iron where chlorosis is being shown on the plants. But I mean, as we've expanded up to nearly just about around 200 acres. We've got essentially, I look at the various blocks that we've got as individual vineyards, and so we are based all on chalk. Have you been to Hambledon yet? Have you been up to?
No, I haven't been, but I saw pictures and I've been in the area before.
Well, next time you're down, I'll happily give you a tour around everywhere. But in front of Ian's house on Windmill Down House, so that field which was planted in the 50s, it is probably 5 centimeters of organic topsoil onto chalk. So it's for using things like rotavators and flails and machines, it's very hard on those machines. But we've got other sites up at away from there, which is on probably 50 to 70 centimeters of clay onto chalk. So that is slightly different soil to manage. But we have a variable different topsoils, but they're all onto chalk.
Because I mean, I was when I started doing this topic, I spoke with a viticulturist, and he was saying how vital is vineyard selection in the UK, especially with such a soil and the limited.
I think.
Yeah.
Height,
what is for you?
The height. I think the height's very important. Wind protection. The topography. So you want to be southeast, south facing, and or elements of south. And but wind is I think sometimes overlooked, because if you get up too high, and we've seen a bit this year in our higher plots where, especially with the May and June we had, which was very windy and rainy, the plants just never got going because they shut down in winds that are too high, But then equally, if you're too low down, you're a frost risk. So there's plenty of sites planted in the UK that are just always susceptible to frost. And I mean, last year, for example, we had 2 sub-zero days in the middle of May. So I think it's a minus in our fields is a -2 and a -2.5 on the 12th and 13th of May, I think it was. And
UK is such a marginal climate, and is literally pushing the where grape variety are growing. And what grape variety are you working with, and what do you have planned?
Oh, we just work with the three sort of classic champagne blends. So Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier, and we're sort of 60-30-10. So 60 Chardonnay, 30 Pinot Noir, 10% Pinot Meunier in the fields. I think actually, I don't know if you've. I think the Pinot Meunier is starting to show very well in this country as a standalone varietal. We're starting to see some really nice expressions of it.
And I mean, for me, it was interesting because when you speak about a lot of people in England, a lot of producers in the UK, they're focusing on vintage wine, and Hambledon is doing the opposite, focusing on non-vintage. Why is that, and what is the aim for it?
I think, I mean, this is obviously a winemaking question, but I think we're aiming at developing a style such as Paul Roger have. So they're white foil, basically, which is a non-vintage style, which is just a classic, elegant wine, and it's the same all the time. And then I think that's essentially the house wine, as it were.
Yeah.
And then I think there are going to be some experimentations with vintage. I think 2018 there might be some products coming out which are small batch vintage wines, like a Blanc de Blanc, perhaps. So they will be there. But I think ultimately, in years like this, for example, if we were doing a vintage every year, we probably wouldn't declare a vintage this year. So, you know, I think having some reserve wines in the winery that we can pull back on. I also think it's a broader palette for assemblage to be able to maintain the standard that I think Ian and Hervé, Felix, Tobias want to maintain. And so I think we're trying to create a house style of wine that's very premium quality and is as is all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I can see the resemble with like big grand marks of champagne,
Yeah.
and the structure, the business structure there. And it was interesting to see then you possibly would to thinking about some vintage wine, because I haven't seen any around. Has it been done before?
No, there haven't been any released. I'm just aware that perhaps in the more bountiful vintages and good vintages like 2018, for example, some of the Chardonnays that came out of certain blocks were of such good quality that I think the guys in the winery were contemplating doing a small batch, a bit like the Premier Rosé.
Something.
So it'd be like a sommelier release.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so where do you see the future at Hambledon? What's happening? I know you're looking at Ian Kellett, the owner, is looking at some big numbers of some increase in the production.
Well, yeah, no, he is. I mean, obviously, we Hambledon quadrupled its vineyard size in 2018. So going up to nearly 80 hectares from 20. And so those vineyards are going to start coming in. Some came into production last year. More should have this year, but the weather's just absolutely, it's been a terrible, terrible season this season for growing. And so that puts us at a very large amount of fruit. And I think Ian's vision is to perhaps get to a certain amount of bottles, or that's where he sees the company going. I think for the time being, we're probably going to maintain where we're at. I think Ian's always looking out for opportunities, though, with regards to land and planting. There's a new visitor centre and restaurant that's currently under construction, and I think there's a lot of focus on that side of the business currently because it's we're very close to London and we're in a South Downs National Park and it's the history of Hambledon, whether it's the house or the cricket or just generally the age of the vineyards and what have you, the original vineyard. People want to come and visit, and it's an income stream that can't be ignored. I don't think so. I mean, I think ultimately it'd be nice to be in the Paul Roger situation where you just don't have any visitors.
Well,
but
I think for me, coming from Italy, it's always been you have more tradition of going to see a vineyard, a wine region, and I see this developing in the UK, which I think is fantastic. I really think that the UK wines are going to just keep growing as.
Do you think that Mattia, they're sort of gathering pace, aren't they, with regards to the quality?
Absolutely. I mean, I see the quality is increasing, and I see that the speak and organization of the various body, there is more work with WineGB, and there's more resources being created for around the UK wines. I mean, UK is still one of the biggest communication, all the big journalists in the UK, so I think there is a big pushing behind the UK wines, and we can't deny that since like probably 2003 there's been this switch in warmth and yeah. And I just wanted to ask you, when you do the new planting, because I know you compare a lot with Champagne, and in Champagne they're doing they have their 4 or 5 pruning system. Are you following that, or what sort of pruning?
I know the Champenois now are looking to emulate the training system we have, which is vertical shoot positioning. So we have rows that are 2.2 meters wide, and the plants, so that the head of the plant will stand at about between 70 and 90 centimeters. And so all of our plants are that high off the ground, at between 70 and 90 centimeters, and then the trellising is up above that. And so, obviously in Champagne, Burgundy, Chablis, it's all down on the very low down and very hard to work. For us, it's good for aeration. It gets the plant up off the ground out of the frost. We basically do we prune everything off apart from two canes or 2 guillots every year, and they're retrained over, and we get the shoots off that. We do some shoot thinning, but essentially we're looking for sort of 1.8 to 1.2 meters of canopy per kilo of fruit. We just create a big hedge, actually, a sort of hedge that stands at sort of just about 2 meters, and we're trying to get a balance in the plant that there's not too much foliage to fruit production, and the different sites have different issues around that balance.
What about yields? Because I know that yields are something that a lot of people are talking about that are very low in the UK. And what is for you, and why is that?
Well, I mean, I think I tend to work from what we're aiming at is a kilo amount per plant. So last year we averaged about 1.85 kilos per plant. In 2018, it was 3.2 kilos per plant. This year it'll be considerably less, I imagine. But I think we're trying to get a couple of kilos of fruit per plant, and anything above that is a really good yield. So if you think we're at around between 3,800, 4,000 plants a hectare, that gives you that yield a hectare. 8 tons,
which is
10 tons
really quite. It's not massive, to be honest.
No. Well, in Champagne they plant 8,000 plants a hectare. So yeah, I mean I think that has been experimented with here. Just that density just hasn't. I don't think it would work here particularly. And I think I mean, in a year like this, it just be.
And I wanted to just ask a couple of questions. You mentioned already the South Down, the sort of coastal mountain range of. How does that help? What does it do for you?
Well, I think we're just one of our sites up at it's about 2 kilometers from Hambledon. You can actually see the sea on a good day, so that helps. That coastal influence has an effect with good breezes, good airflow. Obviously, we're susceptible to rains coming in off there, and I mean the South Downs is just a big chalk seam essentially. That's and it gets up height wise. I'm not quite sure what the height of the highest bit of the downs are, but yeah, I mean it's we try. I think we're just where we have our. Ian's been very particular with his selection of planting plots, so they tend to be at a good height, ranging sort of 100 meters up to about 150 meters. Try and get some wind protection from trees or what have you, wind breaks. But I mean, there's sites cropping up in all sorts of aspects. I don't know if you know Rathfinny down on the south coast I mean, that's virtually in the sea. And but it's on chalk, and it's a great site. But I think the wind there is they've had to really go, pretty extreme with the wind protection. But yeah, I think site selection, good height, good wind protection, and then the rest is kind of in the laps.
Absolutely. And last question: where do you see the future of English wine? Where would you like it to be in possibly 10, 15 years?
Well, if you'd asked me this at the start of this year, I'd have perhaps mentioned that some of the still varietals might start to make a move. I think that's really still quite far behind how good sparkling wine is and is going to be. I think that sparkling wine is already climbing up to the heights of the best, and I think we'll be on par with the very best in the near future. Yeah, I mean, I think some slightly more balanced, warmer summers, and it'll be all systems go. I mean, it is anyway. If you're aware of how many vineyards are being planted in the south, and the as you've alluded to earlier, the wineries that are being opened, and the professionalism of it all. So, I think it's very promising. It's a very exciting industry to be involved in. It feels like we're pushing a new. I mean, it's an established wine, obviously sparkling wine, but it's done in with our character on our shores, and as tricky as that can be. And I think ultimately the people who have started all this process are slightly mad. But I think most things that are kind of enjoyable and
there's definitely always a bit of madness behind a good project of things. I mean, exactly, yeah. I just wanted to thank you again, and I invite everybody to if they're in the UK, or my listeners to go down to visit you in Hampshire at Hambledon.
Yeah, listen, Mattia, whenever you want to, just drop me a line, or the guys in the winery. I'll more than happy come see the vineyards, and I'll happy drive you around all of our sites, and you can get an aspect of where we're at with and how things are going. But ultimately, I think, as you know, you're a sommelier, so you serve wine all the time. So the goal for Hambledon, and I think any of the English wine producers, is to produce the best quality product they can. And I think the team that Ian's put together and continuing to grow is moving in a direction which is going to make a world-class, world-renowned.
Absolutely. Well, with that, I think I'll leave you with this. Was a great statement, and once again, thank you, Nick, from Hambledon Vineyard.
No, it's a pleasure, Mattia. Yeah, cheers.
You listen to the Looking Into Wine podcast. With me today is Nick Cran-Crombie, and we spoke about Hampshire and Hambledon Vineyards. If you enjoyed the podcast, remember to hit the subscribe button and to tell your friends about it. Be sure to go to meticulturalist.com and to subscribe to the mailing list. You can find Looking Into Wine on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and every major listening app. The next episode will be with Sam Lindo of Camel Valley in Cornwall.